The voice of college football is putting these 10 teams on upset alert for week 1. Welcome to the voice of college football. Best discussion, debate, and analysis based on your participation. Leave your comments below. Which ones of these are possible, probable, or heck, no way it's going to happen? Or are there other upset possibilities out there that you like for week 1? Let's run them down, starting with the big one on Thursday night, Florida and Utah, with, of course, the Gators winning last year in Gainesville on the last play of the game when Cam Rising was picked off in the end zone. And now the return trip by the Utes as a 7-point favorite at home. Keep in mind, of course, Billy Napier was able to win his first ever game at Florida against a ranked opponent. Cam Rising, 50-50 for this game for the much publicized injury he has suffered throughout going back to last season's Rose Bowl. Brandon Rose, backup quarterback, also Bryson Barnes in the mix. It was Barnes who threw the touchdown pass 2 seasons ago to tie the Rose Bowl against Ohio State before the Buckeyes kicked a last-second field goal to win it. Brandon Rose, most likely the starting quarterback in place of Rising. Also, keep in mind that Nate Johnson is an elite dynamic playmaker at the quarterback position who could get some packages to take advantage of his talents. Florida is playing its first road game out of conference since 1989, going to Syracuse. So Gators, welcome to America. The Gators probably have more talent on the roster top to bottom. There is also no Dalton Kincaid and no Clark Phillips for the Utes this season, 2 of the better players in college football in 2022. We will see Graham Mertz's debut for the Gators. Will he be a different quarterback as a former 5-star at Florida than he was at Wisconsin? Upset alert, Utah, you're a touchdown favorite, but with a unsure quarterback situation taking on possibly a more talented roster in Florida at a rabid Rice-Eccles Stadium. Let's go to the other Thursday night affair. Minnesota and Nebraska. The Huskers, a big touchdown underdog against Minnesota, who rarely beats anyone in the Big Ten with a pulse by more than a touchdown. Minnesota has won 4 consecutive games in the series, 3 of them, though, by 1 score. Jeff Sims has the experience factor on his counterpart, Ethan Kalikimanis, the Minnesota starting quarterback, who did get some valuable playing time last season, including a 319-yard effort against Wisconsin in the Gophers' win to conclude the regular season last year, and then a bowl win against Syracuse. What has plagued Nebraska in these early Big Ten affairs the last 2 seasons against Northwestern and Illinois and losing 1-score games has been the lack of attention to detail that you would believe that Matt Rule has shored up. Nebraska, a 7-point underdog in Minneapolis next Thursday night. Let's stay in the Big Ten and go to Friday night's affair in East Lansing. Michigan State coming off a disappointing 5-7 season and little expectation of them improving much, taking on Central Michigan, just a 4-win team out of the MAC, and a 14.5-point dog against Sparty. Michigan State has won 14 consecutive games against MAC opponents. The last time they lost, it was to Central Michigan in 2009, 29-27. Many of these Central Michigan players, keep in mind, were snubbed wanting to play for one of the big schools in the state of Michigan, so there is always that incentive. Michigan State has lost its top 2 wide receivers, also lost its quarterback Peyton Thorne to Auburn. Enter Noah Kim, 19 pass attempts in his career with 3 touchdowns, but of course not much experience there. He is matched up against quarterback Jace Bauer of Central Michigan, who only threw 1 touchdown against 5 picks last season. It's Central Michigan, a 2-touchdown underdog against Michigan State in East Lansing on Friday night. Next up, we go to Saturday, and we go to the ACC, and Boston College coming off a 3-win campaign taking on Northern Illinois, who also only won 3 games, 9.5-point dog at BC. BC last season lost to UConn. They lost to Rutgers, so they can pretty much lose to anyone. Emmett Moorhead, the new starting quarterback, is a dual-threat guy, 10 touchdowns and 6 picks, and most impressively led a last-minute drive down the field and game-winning touchdown throw against NC State for BC. That was the highlight of their 2022. On the flip side, we mentioned Northern Illinois, only 3 wins as well, but they only lost to Vandy by 10 and Kentucky by 8. Kept those very close. This could be a low-scoring affair. At Chestnut Hill, Boston College, a 9.5-point favorite against Northern Illinois. Look out, Eagles. Next up, we've got probably the most inconceivable upset offering of the weekend. Buffalo, a 7-6 team in the MAC last season, do return their starting quarterback. Wisconsin, though, looks primed for a run to the Big Ten Western Division Championship under first-year head coach Luke Fickell, a 25-point favorite at home against the Buffalo Bills. How could the Badgers possibly lose this one? We mentioned Cole Snyder back at quarterback for the Bulls, 18 touchdowns and 8 picks, but this is all about Wisconsin gelling early. New head coach Luke Fickell, new offensive and defensive coordinators in Phil Longo and Mike Tressel, new quarterback in Tanner Mordecai, who did throw 72 touchdowns over the past 2 seasons at SMU, but it could be a slow start for the Badgers. They were a 6-6 regular season team last year, taking on Buffalo. The Bulls, a 25-point dog at Camp Randall. But Wisconsin has been scared in the past. They may be scared on this one against the Bulls. One of the great rivalries in decades gone by of the Eastern Bloc of Independence in college football being renewed in Happy Valley as Penn State gunning for not just the Big Ten championship, but college football playoff appearance, taking on West Virginia. The media's last place selection in the Big 12, coming off a 5-7 campaign. Keep in mind, though, despite the low expectations for the Mountaineers, who come into this game as a 20.5-point dog, West Virginia does boast 3 All-America candidates at the offensive line position, and also C.J. Donaldson, who might be the best back in the Big 12. So it would appear that the strategy would be bleed the clock, and then on defense, throw the kitchen at new starter Drew Aller, multi-talented 5-star quarterback for Penn State. Did pick up some meaningful experience for Penn State last year, but this is the first time he shoulders the offense. And of course, he's got 2 of the best backs in the nation behind him. But it's West Virginia, it's Penn State, and maybe the Mountaineers have a shot as a nearly 3-touchdown dog. The Power 5 defeats the Group of 5 consistently 85 to 90% of the time. So it does happen 10 or 15% of the time. You got to find those Group of 5s that are capable of knocking off the Power 5. And this would actually be a good Power 5 going down. They're on the road. The Red Raiders looking ahead possibly to Oregon in week 2. Travel to Wyoming, where the Red Raiders are a 14-point favorite. They are the chic pick to be a possible dark horse contender in the Big 12, coming off a Texas Bowl win and 8-win season. Tyler Shook is the starting quarterback, and shoot, he's got to lose a game at some point. He's 9-0 as starting quarterback at Texas Tech, facing quarterback Andrew Peasley, back as the starter for the Cowboys. They lost most of their defense, but of course, Craig Bohl knows what he's doing at Wyoming. He's been around a long, long time, and he's been in these situations before, and he's got the Red Raiders at home and a possible look ahead to Oregon. Texas Tech, a 14-point favorite on the road at Wyoming. Look out. Last year, UCLA came within 1 score of going to the Pac-12 championship game, but along the way, they almost blew one in September at the Rose Bowl against South Alabama, barely escaping 32-31. Now UCLA missing a lot of great personnel from last season's team. Tight end, running back, quarterback takes on a game Coastal Carolina team at the Rose Bowl. Let's check it out. The Chanticleers, a 16.5-point dog coming off a 9-4 season. In fact, both teams 9-4 last year. At quarterback for UCLA, it's either going to be the 5-star Dante Moore or the incoming transfer Colin Schlee from Kent State, 11 touchdowns and 5 picks. But again, as we mentioned, their leading receiver, Jake Boso, gone. And then also Zach Charbonnet, one of the best backs in all of college football. They bring in a lot of transfers at both positions to try to supplement there. Grayson McCall, 95 touchdowns, not his first rodeo. He has been the quarterback there at CCU for a long, long time. The Chanticleers bring back their top 4 rushers, their top 4 receivers, including Sam Pinckney, who caught 71 balls for 1,000 yards. It's a possibility. Coastal Carolina, without their successful head coach and Jamie Chadwell, of course. Now Tim Beck is the guy calling the shots for the Chanticleers, taking on the Bruins and Chip Kelly at the Rose Bowl. And finally, the final game of the weekend, and wouldn't this be something? Duke hosting Clemson as a 13-point dog to the Tigers, and the team that has owned the ACC for a decade, coming off a 9-0 run against the conference last year. But of course, Clemson struggled outside the ACC, and Duke showed last season that they are for real. And consider, with all the change, all the churn in college football from a personnel standpoint due to graduation in the transfer portal, Duke brings back 18 starters, including quarterback Riley Leonard, accounted for over 30 touchdowns. All their receivers, all their running backs. I've never seen this before. Every rushing yard, every reception on offense coming back. And again, 18 total starters out of 22 positions. For Clemson, of course, they're the more talented team. They're a substantial favorite in this one by almost 2 touchdowns. But Cade Klubnik was rough, sketchy, unstable in those outings in which he had to perform. Came in against Notre Dame, didn't look good. Came in against Syracuse. The defense led the Tigers to the comeback victory. And of course, his other outings, not the best. The bowl game, only put up a couple touchdowns against Tennessee in a 17-point loss. This could get interesting. Duke came that close to appearing in the ACC championship game last year. Probably a bad call away from knocking off North Carolina and getting to the title game. Clemson better watch it. 1 year ago, they were taking on a much less Georgia Tech team and only led 14-10 in the third quarter. This time, they're on the road against a much more capable, confident team. And Mike Elko continues to work the magic at 9-4 last season at Duke. Clemson, Duke, could it happen? Your comments, your questions down below, and of course, your upset picks as well. We'd love to see them right here at the Voice of College Football.